So good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. We have quite a few participants, but I'm delighted to say that recognize a lot of the names, so that's wonderful. So I'm Dave King. I'm Executive VP of Mobile Solutions with Confirmit. I was previously CEO of Techneo Systems, which you may recall, or if you're following the industry, merged with Confirmit just about over a year ago. So I'm excited to share with you where we are in the marketplace, and more importantly, what I think some of the opportunities are for us. I must say, mobile, we believe, has been on the cusp of greatness for the last 10 years. Probably one of the slowest adoptions we've seen in technology, but I'm also happy to say about 2 years ago, we saw a significant advance in the adoption of mobile solutions. Prior to that, we ended up with feature-rich but project-poor pilots and curious implementations of the technology. Again, about 2 years ago, we saw the innovation groups in large MR start to morph into mainstream operations groups, and we're seeing global rollouts at companies like Ipsos and others. And we're also seeing that small and medium-sized MR are using mobile solutions as a differentiator in the marketplace that they serve. So they're seeing this as a way to differentiate themselves. I'm also happy to say that we believe that now is indeed mainstream for a number of companies. This year we'll complete approximately 20 million mobile surveys and capture about 8 million pieces of multimedia. So we've got some way to go, but we're happy with the traction that we've seen to date. Okay, what I'd like to do is start with what I believe are the 4 fundamental premises. Those are the premises that keep us focused and keep us looking at opportunities in the marketplace. First and foremost, we believe that the mobile collection channel has the opportunity to capture more insights that you can't capture any other way. And some people consider it just another channel. We believe that it can be much more than that. If you truly exploit the opportunity that mobile has to deliver, you can capture insights that you can't capture through any other channel. Now, that's not to diminish the operational benefits of mobile. We're seeing a lot of customers continuing to replace paper and other methodologies with mobile because of the operational benefits. But we believe the primary fundamental benefit of mobile, if implemented correctly, is to capture insights that you can't capture any other way. So the second fundamental premise, we believe, is that mobile is unforgiving. It's in that people will disengage quicker from a mobile methodology than any other methodology. They expect it to be entertaining. They expect it to be relevant, timely, personal, and engaging. And if you get it right, people will open their lives. If you don't, it'll fizzle and fail. So we've seen some spectacular failures with mobile. Unlike other technologies, people will not put up with an average experience. It's been suggested that 95% of people will not give a poor mobile experience a second chance. That's using whatever mode you might consider. But 95% is a fairly high disengagement if you don't get it right. The other fundamental premise is that one size doesn't fit all. It's a confusing, fragmented landscape and continues to be, and there's really no sign of that changing. We've got multiple browser options. We've got multiple platforms. Who would have predicted this time that Nokia would lose from 45% market share down to single digits? Who would have predicted the challenges that BlackBerry is having? Who would have predicted the opportunity that Android seems to have? And then more recently, we're seeing that Samsung is reintroducing their operating system. So we could have a 3-horse race between iPhone, Android, and what's called BATA. What this means for our customers, whether they're MR customers or brand customers, is that it's a challenge. There are no standards, and that you need to consider your options carefully as you make your decisions to go forward. The fourth fundamental premise is that market research is not marketing, that we as technology companies have to take into consideration the history, the methodologies that have been in place for many years. Market research can't abandon those, and nor should they abandon those, and nor should we as technologists expect them to abandon those. So what we find is that it's not appropriate for technology companies to stand on the sidelines and gripe about slow adoption. It's up to us to cater to market research as a special case, because it is not marketing. Marketing is not burdened by this. They can adopt technologies and change their processes based on new offerings. So we believe that there are two situations that market research and brand need to consider when they're pondering mobile. The first is what we call accidental mobile. So here's the reality. I'm sure this is not a surprise to everybody. Our customers and our participants and our clients and our employees, they have smartphones and they're using them as such. They're taking advantage of the capabilities, and like it or not, we're in the mobile business. You're in the mobile business, and it's not going away. Some are suggesting that mobile is actually happening to you, because people are taking your surveys and your studies on their mobile devices, whether you know that or not, or whether you've designed them for that or not. And the bar's been raised, as I suggested earlier. It has to be entertaining, it has to be relevant, and they're not cutting us any slack for the fact that we might not have considered the fact that they're accidentally taking our studies on mobile devices. The second situation that we need to ponder is purposeful mobile. So this is where we decide on purpose. This is where we choose to harness and exploit the technology in our studies by design. So here's an example. Guests record the moment of President Obama's First Lady, Michael Obama's dance. We're not sure if that'll be repeated this year, but it is pervasive, and we need to look at both situations, and we're going to take a look at each of those closer now. So the Future Foundation coined the term smart boredom, where they suggest that the reality is that downtime is no longer truly idle time, and that it's being used productively. So we have an opportunity to fill those cracks if we do it properly. But here's the deal. You need to enable people as they choose to interact with you. And the expectations among them is that they will choose when and how they want to interact with us. And although we don't set out to create frustrating experiences, often we do. You can see from some of these collections where the methodology didn't take into consideration the reality of their experience. And people aren't making a distinction any longer. They're not saying, oh, well, that's for research purposes. They get mad at your brand. And one of the primary messages we like to say to our customers, and this is an important point, is that mobile can negatively affect what you thought was a safe, predictable methodology. Your participants are using mobile phones in the way they choose to, and they can actually be causing you to damage brand equity with the clients that you're trying to satisfy. Okay, so does this really matter? Is this technology looking for a solution? We think not. We think now that if surveys are an extension of the brand experience, we don't want to unwittingly erode that equity. I remember an uncomfortable conversation we had about 18 months ago with a brand customer who took a survey that was destined for online on their mobile device. And it was uncomfortable because it didn't render properly, and it was inappropriate experience for them. So grids are possible, but definitely not this way, the sea of bubbles. This other survey that I'm showing you, the transitions aren't working so well, but this was actually for a mobile carrier, and it was flash-enabled. So this is one, we sign up for all sorts of mobile surveys, of course, and this is one that was designed without the consideration that people may be taking it on an iPhone, and they would have excluded many of their participants. The other thing we're finding is mobile is catching even some big enterprise customers and clients by surprise. Facebook suggests or shares with us that mobile devices, users on mobile devices are twice as active as those online, and that they feel that their biggest threat to growth is the ability to monetize, or the biggest opportunity growth is the ability to monetize mobile. And if they don't get that right, they think that will be a significant detriment. Okay, so that's how to not to do it. So the good news is the technology is no longer the barrier. It was 2 years ago. Admittedly, it was a real challenge 2 years ago. But currently, the technology is available to allow your online surveys to render for the specific device that they're being taken on. This happens automatically. So they can identify whether it's an Android or an iPhone or a BlackBerry and what model it will be. The technology allows you to brand. It allows you to adopt style guides that are typically mirroring those that are online. And it allows you to adjust for tablets of varying formats and resolutions as well. So technology is no longer the excuse. We believe that you should hold your suppliers accountable to a higher standard. It's possible now. It's readily available. If you happen to be a Confirmit customer, you have this as a standard offering. But technology is no longer the excuse. So let's take a quick look at how we're doing in the industry. So Tim Macer and Sheila Wilson of Meaning Limited in the UK completed a study earlier this year that was released at CASRO. And a significant part of that study was a section on smartphones and their use in the market research industry. So here's a snapshot of some of those findings. So 62% of us in the market research industry don't take smartphones into consideration. 23% have a policy, and that policy is actually to identify and reject somebody that is trying to take a survey on a smartphone. Well, that's 85% that we either ignore or abuse. 15% actually have a policy to adjust for smartphones. And also, surprisingly, nobody in this study suggested that they had a process to capture and route somebody that is a willing participant to another study that might be more appropriate for a smartphone. So again, the message here is we're now at the point where no decision is a decision, and that is a negative decision and can actually cost you in how you're treating your customers. So we're going to take a look at Purposely Mobile now. And purposely, as you recall, I suggested it's about exploiting and taking advantage of the technology, so choosing on purpose. So it's about in-the-moment studies. There's three different areas that we're seeing as core drivers to our company. These are the areas that our roadmap is really focused on. So it's in the moment. It's through a lens of their choosing where we're allowed to understand motivations, emotions, and the context that might influence those opinions. This happens to be a baking study we did for a client where the study was designed to be over 5 days, and the participants were asked to purchase an ingredient. They were asked to cook their recipe, share their process, all the way through to consumption. And we thought, well, this is a big ask. So this is a high level of engagement. It included photo capture, it included audio, and we actually ended up having to close the study after 2 days because of the enthusiastic participation. So the market research customer we did this for said that was the first time that they've seen such enthusiastic participation where we captured rich verbatims, and it was because the nature of the study was compelling and timely and relevant. They were excited to participate. So the second area we're seeing a lot of drive towards is new data and new approaches. So video, audio, both capture and playback, QR and barcodes. We've got Siri, voice to text. We've got a customer that uses our solution to connect with a Bluetooth device. So they're able to capture, in this case, lung capacity and feedback and combine that with the solution. So we're seeing customers take this beyond your typical ask and tell survey, and they're including expansion into new data and new approaches. The third primary area is location-based services. So this is the ability to invite by location, to validate data, to track participants, to trigger surveys based on somebody's location, and then to provide some journey mapping. Exciting area. that we're seeing a lot of interest in. So the other thing we caution our customers on is to be aware of technology for technology's sake. We see customers that want to implement all of the bells and whistles, and we caution them on that. Get back to the fundamentals. What are we trying to achieve? And to not be wowed necessarily by the feature set, but to look at what the objective is you're trying to accomplish. So we have a fairly simple model that we guide our customers through. We find that we have to take a consultative approach. And so what we do is we consult with them to determine what the primary mobile mode is that would be the most beneficial for their study. As you know, there are 3 modes. They have their advantages and disadvantages. SMS, of course, the advantages reach and access. Theoretically, you can reach any phone on the planet. The disadvantages are the depth of the insights, the limitation to 140 characters, no multimedia, poor experience, and it can be quite expensive. But it does have its place. Mobile browser, of course, the advantages, you can have rich visual customizations. It's the most seamless multi-mode option that you have, and you can approximate the look and feel of an online survey. The disadvantages are the necessity to be online. You've got limited multimedia and an inconsistent experience. Then we've got mobile applications. The advantages, of course, are the user experience can be controlled and managed to a greater extent. You can capture rich insights. You can really exploit multimedia and ongoing engagement and the ability to work offline. The disadvantages, it's a burden to download and continues to be so, and limited customization. So people often ask us, well, which is going to win and which is right? There is no winner and there is no right. It is whatever the study demands. Now, you should work with somebody, we'd suggest, that has all 3 available so that you're not pushed into their area of expertise only. So the other area we look at, quite simply, is these criteria on this axis. Do you need in-the-moment data? Does it always have to be available using alarms and alerts and offline? Is multimedia appointment, geolocation, sensory inputs, multinational? We have customers that have studies in 8 countries and 8 different languages, and then branding and customization. So it's a simple grid, but it allows us to help focus the attention of our customers into determining what they feel are the best opportunities. So I'm going to talk about a couple of case studies here. One of the more challenging groups, of course, are medical professionals. So major pharmaceutical manufacturer needed to deepen its understanding of oncologist treatment of terminally ill cancer patients. So a very touchy subject. So the characteristics of these respondents were medical professionals. They were inherently mobile, high smartphone adoption, needed to be offline. They were accustomed to dictating. And this was an interesting one that the pharmaceutical wanted us to address. They suspected that their advocates were actually completing the surveys. So their assistants and their partners and others, someone other than themselves, which obviously made concern for the data. So the findings are as listed here, and the most important one was number 4 of how patients and doctors influenced each other. The fact that we allowed them to capture audio verbatims, which is very comfortable for the doctors, we were able to determine how the patient actually affected the doctor based on making inferences on the audio that he was providing. We also, of course, were able to account the emotions of the patient through the physician. So it actually provided the physician or the pharmaceutical company some interesting insights that they didn't think they could have captured any other way. Another case study, this happened in London at a major sporting event in the summer. And in this case, we had a highly engaged audience with multiple venues. We also had a custom application that was already built for the sporting event that was widely installed. And we also had time and location certainty. So when the customer approached us and we determined that these were the three criteria they had, or the three characteristics: a highly engaged audience, an application that was already existing, and time and location certainty, the initial thought was, should we bury an application inside an application? But then we determined that the best approach was to use the mobile browser, where we were able to launch a survey and a study from within the application that was triggered by the time and location certainty, because we knew where the event was happening and when it was happening. So in that case, we participated or coordinated our efforts with their existing application. So customer journey mapping is another area that we're finding a lot of traction. And this is the ability to go along for the ride, where we're capturing that rich qualitative data of photos and videos, and we're complementing that with the journey mapping and GPS coordinates. So snacking studies, travel studies, anywhere you need a full experience over a period of time. So Heineken is a customer of ours in Africa. We've got a number of studies on the go in the Congo, Kinshasa, Nigeria, Madagascar, and Tunisia and Ethiopia. And what they're looking to do is use a solution that will help them profile the markets that they sell into, because the local information is incomplete, the local information is suspect. So what they've done is they've armed a group with devices and the solution that will allow them to take a photo, capture GPS coordinates, complete a store audit, and interview a proprietor. And what they're able to do is capture information that, again, they feel that they could only capture through mobile devices. So it's really it's a microeconomy where distribution can happen through backpacks. And one day a facility like this will be selling product, and another day it won't. So keeping that information up to date and accurate is important. What they share with us is it's as important about what's not there, so the white space, so they can see where they have significant outlets and where they have opportunity for more outlets. And we can then take this information, analyze it for them, and help them by deploying sales and distribution channels based on the information collected. So the last study I want to share with you is a major US-based retailer who has two fairly significant programs underway. One is a shopper non-buyer program. So this is a situation where they know that they have people entering their facility and their stores, but they're not purchasing. So they're making the effort to come to their store, but they're not making any subsequent purchase. The other study is an employee insights channel. This retailer has 180,000 employees, so they're engaging those employees with the solution so that they can build themselves effectively a panel for to gather insights. And what they've done, which is quite unique, or at least quite progressive, is they really have a multi-channel collection. So surveys are being initiated all the time from any point of experience, whether this be warranty, whether this is delivery, whether this is interaction with customers or employees, suppliers. So they've got a massive feedback channel, and they wanted to employ all modes. So SMS, application, tablets, kiosks. But the most important part of this study is their belief that capturing at the point of experience in real time is only valuable if you then can take action. And so we've helped them to build their systems so that that information goes directly into their customer service system, where they can take action immediately and address issues should they be outstanding. So back to the grid. You can see that we tend to cover, or customers will look for methodologies that cover all modes. Application, in this case, happens to be fairly well represented with the medical services, the retail, and the Heineken example, but also mobile browser with the sporting goods example, and then SMS. So this, again, just helps our customers get around the fairly confusing marketplace and how we can help them find solutions. So in closing, we'd like to suggest you have a lot of tools in your toolkit, and they all need to be deployed appropriately when it comes to collecting insights. And we're suggesting to people that now is the time that mobile solutions be on that list and considered, because to not do so, we feel is missing an opportunity. So with that, Beth, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay, great.
And then I'm going to reintroduce Stuart Ryder. We've been working with Stuart as the SVP of Mobile Research at IoTX for quite a number of years now. And initially, Stuart was an evangelist for mobile within his organization. And as I mentioned in my opening, now we have global implementations with Stuart and some very interesting, innovative implementations. I think he's going to share some of those with you today. So welcome, Stuart. Thanks for participating.
Thanks, Dave. Can everyone hear me?
So just begin your introduction briefly while I find out which line I need to mute here.
Okay, Beth, can you hear me?
And we're getting some feedback from another user, though.
Maybe can you hear
Stuart, are you there? Stuart?
Yes.
Okay, great. Feel free to begin. I think we narrowed down the problem.
Okay, thanks. If you could just advance the slide, that'd be great.
Yes.
So good afternoon, good morning, and good evening. To reiterate what Dave said, and Dave, thanks for the introduction. What I wanted to talk about today was the way that we at Ipsos work with our clients to help them build mobile research into their overall research plan. And really what that comes down to is helping them both articulate and evolve a mobile research strategy. So next slide, please. What our clients, just as a way of introduction, what our clients are doing with mobile today falls mostly into these four areas. And I'll talk a little bit about each of these just very briefly. But our clients, obviously do surveys, they do audit work, they also do longitudinal diaries and ethnographies. So maybe think of ethnographies as, as diaries with rich media capture, with photo and video and audio included. They do mobile live events. Mobile live events are essentially mobile focus groups, if you will. And we do passive monitoring studies. So we actually do device metering, and we'll talk a little bit about that as well. Next slide, please. As far as surveys, diaries, and ethnographies, what this really comes down to is using the smartphone, whether it's done through an application or through a mobile web survey. The primary advantage here is to be able to bring in a lot of contextual information that can be captured through mobile, so photos and videos and location capture and such. That helps us understand things like what people are doing in store, what they're doing when they're away from home, some of the path to purchase applications that Dave mentioned. This helps us understand how people really use a product or a service, and it helps us understand the things that influence them to purchase it, the factors that are in place around them that are experiencing them to buy or to make a particular decision one way or another. Next slide, please. Mobile live events, as I mentioned before, think of these as a mobile focus group. So we have a number of people who have downloaded an application who are in two-way communication with a moderator. We typically do these sorts of studies in conjunction with a broadcast or or with some sort of a live event, so that we can send out polling questions to people in real time. We can pre-program survey questions. We can script survey questions on the fly based upon what people are telling us. We can get a lot of information as the event is going on. These have been especially valuable for us in our advertising practice, getting reaction to both sponsorship and to the impact of advertising. Next slide, please. Passive measurement, what we're talking about here is really understanding how the device itself is being used, and our media group has done a number of studies with passive measurement or metering, and primarily what they're looking to understand is how is media consumption different between online, between smartphones and tablets. In these studies, we actually have participants download a series of meters to their devices that record their on-device activities, so we understand what sites they're going to. We understand how long they're on different sites, and how their behavior online is different between what they're doing on a mobile device and what they're doing on a PC. So next slide. So to get into the the issues that we face when we help people develop a mobile research strategy, what I wanted to do up front was just reiterate a couple of things that Dave said. First of all, mobile is more than simply an alternate data collection methodology. Mobile really does provide insights that are not available through other means. And in terms of building a strategy and helping our clients evolve those strategies, it really is important, as Dave said, to get it right from the beginning. So in the example that I'll show you, the first step in the process was really helping the client get comfortable with mobile, helping them validate it as a methodology that worked for them. And then finally, history matters. Understanding the research context that the client is coming from, understanding the work that they've done in the past, and making sure that mobile research dovetails well with what they've done before. Next slide. So what I wanted to talk to you about today was one particular client's journey, if you will, from a starting point where they were simply dabbling in simple mobile surveys, all the way through to using mobile research to really deepen their understanding of their consumers, to engage with their consumers, and to understand how their consumers both perceived their brand and shared their feelings about the brand. So this example, or this particular client, is a large financial services company that we've worked with for a number of years. And it was really a three-part or a three-step journey in developing a research strategy. So let's talk about the first step. Next slide. So step one was really just understanding the role that mobile research could play in their overall research plan as a tool. Next slide. What they wanted to understand initially was how they could reach a broad sample of their consumers both quickly and inexpensively. They wanted to understand how they could access consumers in markets where they were having difficulty reaching them through traditional methodologies, whether those were online methodologies that were problematic simply because of the availability of respondents, or whether those were face-to-face activities that they've been involved in that were slower and more expensive perhaps than they wanted them to be. But the first step in the process, they chose 3 different countries, all extremely important growth markets for them to prove out how mobile could work within their overall portfolio. So they chose Brazil, Japan, and the United States. And step one was really to just prove the feasibility of mobile survey data collection in those markets. Next slide. So what they did was they initially conducted mobile web surveys with a very similar goal to the goal that they'd had with their online and face-to-face work in the past, so that they could compare the results across methodologies. They conducted surveys to identify what share of their customers' purchasing came from different payment types, so cash versus debit versus credit. They compared the results to similar measurements that they had gotten back from online and from face-to-face. And all the way through the process across all three countries, what they did was they developed the reporting protocols and they demonstrated that using mobile, they had access to respondents, quickly, and that the accuracy of the data was consistent with what they had seen from other methodologies. And essentially what they did in this first step by going across these three countries was the MRD department and the marketing group basically gave mobile research a check mark as something that could be used much more broadly and much more extensively across the organization. Next slide. So the next step in the process, after having sort of validated mobile as a methodology, was to understand how they could mine for deeper insights and where mobile could be used to get them things that they weren't able to get through their traditional methodologies. And the first thing they did, the first group that sort of raised their hand, was the group that works with payments while, it's the travel and leisure group. So they work with people's payments while they're traveling, people's payments for entertainment and hotels and transportation and such. Next slide. So the goal here was really to understand through a mobile project how people were paying for different types of goods and services while they were traveling, and to use a smartphone application with some passive data collection to understand exactly what types of purchases tended to lend themselves to which types of purchase methods or payment methods. Next slide. So what people did, they downloaded an application to their smartphone, and we did this over about a 10-day period. This was for U.S. domestic travelers, for several hundred different travelers. And what we asked them to do was every time they bought something, whether they used cash, whether they used credit, or whether they used debit, to record that through a very simple application on the smartphone, to also tag their location by capturing GPS coordinates so we could understand where they were, what they were doing, what sorts of things they were buying, and what sorts of factors led them to consider different types of payment methods for different types of purchases. Next slide, thanks. This is a slide that just shows you on the map where different respondents were when they were providing us this information. And as you can see, over 2/3 did provide us with their location. We've done several studies along similar lines since then, and we've seen that percentage increase from 2/3 to 3/4 up to over 80% for most of our studies. Next slide. One of the things that was kind of unique to the mobile study that was above and beyond what our clients had seen from survey work they'd done in this area before was the ability to do photo capture and to really put the responses to the survey questions, you know, why did you buy what you bought, what factors might have influenced you, those sorts of things. But to put those in context by allowing respondents to take photographs of both the things they bought, the people they were with, the context they were in. So as you can see, you know, given that this was a study that was focused on travelers and travel expenditures, Mostly what they took pictures of was, the food they were eating, the hotels they were staying in, entertainment, travel, and transportation. But what this really did was help our client kind of paint a picture through not just the answers to survey questions, but through the photographs that respondents provided, really helped them understand where people were, who they were with, why they were making the decisions they were making. All of this very helpful to really get a better understanding of the overall decision-making process on the part of their customers. Next slide. So what did we learn? Overall, we learned that credit was really strongly associated for most travelers with rewards. Strong focus on the points and the rewards that they got, but not for small purchases. So what you see for each type of payment method here, for credit cards, for debit cards, and cash, are the reasons that respondents gave for why they decided to use each one of these payment methods for different types of purchases. And the next slide. So fundamentally what it came down to, especially for credit, was if you took all the responses, people were very interested in the kind of rewards they got both on their credit and their debit cards. They were very aware of security, and that was a big issue for them. And convenience in terms of debit versus credit, which one of those methods was best for them, was most convenient. So the third step in the process, after kind of first getting comfortable with mobile, and second, using mobile in a diary context, was to combine a number of different activities together. And this was a project that we did to help our client understand the effectiveness of their sponsorship of NFL football, and also to understand their customers' use of social media activity during football broadcasts. So essentially what we had was we had people watching TV, we had people using a smartphone app, and we had people telling us in real time their reaction to both advertising and their awareness of sponsorship. So next slide. So the background here was, the client really wanted to understand, was their current promotion, was their current advertising campaign something that people were, were noticing? Was it something that they were sharing on social media? So we conducted mobile surveys as a way for them to evaluate whether mobile would help them understand both advertising and sponsorship, both for the current football season as well as for the Olympic Games and the upcoming football season. So what they wanted, their objectives here were to understand their fans' interaction with social media, to assess which sponsors really stood out while people were watching the game, to get insights and reactions to their current promotion and their current TV commercials, and then to figure out how they could build this as a tool into their advertising campaign for the upcoming season. Next slide. So what we did was we constructed some surveys to measure their awareness of sponsorship, and also to gauge the effectiveness of their advertising throughout the game. We had respondents capture media during the event and to give us their impressions of the environment within which they were viewing the game. So this involved taking photographs of their locations, taking photographs of the people that they were with, helping us understand what kind of devices they were working with, how many people were there, who was involved in social media activity and who wasn't. And then finally, we had them record their locations so we could understand exactly who was at home and who was watching the game in a social setting away from home, or who was watching the game in a social setting at home. Next slide. So what they did was they responded to survey questions, they took photos, they gave us their locations. You know, we got all of that contextual information about what they were doing during the game. We broke the actual research down into 4 sections so that people were prompted throughout the broadcast of the football game before, during, and after the halftime show, because the halftime show was the part of the program that our client was actually sponsoring. And the questions that they were asked were all related to advertising, to sponsorship, and to the use of social media. Next page. So what we learned was that their current ad really successfully broke through, connected well with people, largely because it was funny. There were prizes involved. It was relevant to the NFL broadcast. The prompted recall of the ad was extremely high, with about 2/3 of people remembering the ad. And the ad did strengthen the client's connection with the NFL in people's minds. We also found out that their connection with fans as a sponsor of the NFL was strong, but that their branding of the halftime show sponsorship was actually very low. And, you know, there were a number of reasons for that. But we found that only about 6% of people were able to successfully link the brand to the halftime sponsorship. So definitely some work to be done there. And we found out that about 2/3 of brand users were actively engaged in social media during the NFL games. By giving them a number of open-ended questions to answer, we found out that they would most likely share their thoughts and their feelings about ads and promotions if they thought those were funny, if they thought that they were something that their friends on social media would be interested in. But we did see a fairly high level of people who were sharing information about the ads and about the sponsorship during the game. Next slide. So overall, you know, where this client has gone, and this was over about a 4 to 5 month period, is from a very early stage of doing some fairly simple quantitative surveys to validate that mobile was a methodology that made sense for them to use, all the way through to much deeper longitudinal diary and ethnographic applications of mobile. They've continued to build mobile into their plan. They are doing similar sponsorship and advertising evaluation work for this season as what they tested last season, and they're branching out in a number of different ways to build mobile into their overall research plan. So, you know, really what it brought to them was, you know, as Dave mentioned up front, and in the moment, at the point of experience, at the point of purchase, understanding of their customers. It brought them a 24/7 excuse me, the phone went dead for a second. Brought them a 24/7 access to their customers. Brought them the use of rich data collection techniques like photos and videos and location, and it combined active and passive into a 360-degree understanding of their customers. So with that, I'm going to turn it back to Beth and to Dave and take any questions that people on the call may have. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Stuart. So we've got a ton of questions, and we don't have that much time left, so I'm just going to jump right in and start asking them. If for some reason we don't get to your question, we will address it afterwards. We'll send it out to Dave or Stuart and get them to answer that for you. So the first question is for you, Stuart. From the traveler's diary that you described, how did you deal with the issue of roaming charges?
Well, the application works both online and offline, so what we were able to do was have people you know, if they were on a plane or if they were, you know, out of an area where they were, you know, where their plan covered them, they were able to complete the diary in an offline mode, and then when they were back, you know, connected and connected in an area where they wouldn't be hit with those charges, they were able to upload and sync up their answers at that point.
Okay, great. And then maybe for both of you, Stuart and Dave, for people that are just getting started, when should they consider using a mobile app versus a mobile web survey? Stuart, do you want to take that?
Yeah, sure. I think using an application for the sake of using an application is never the right idea, but using an application, for the things that it brings you, such as, the ability to do rich media, the ability to work online and offline, the ability to sort of script out an experience over time, if you're doing a diary or an ethnography project, the ability to to capture a location, all of those things that can't be done typically through through a mobile web study, I think argue very strongly in favor of using a downloadable application.
Okay, great. Dave, do you have anything to add there?
No, I would just reinforce everything Stuart suggested, and we also suggest that ongoing engagement. If somebody's going to download an app, you want them to participate in that study, which can be for a period of time, and then subsequent studies, so you get to build an environment and an ecosystem of participants.
Okay, thank you. The next one goes to you, Dave. You seem to have a number of global studies. Are you doing anything in China, and are there any special considerations for that country or any other countries that you're working in?
Yeah, good one. Yes, we are doing some things in China. We're doing some things with big MR, small MR, and we're also doing something with some of the local governments. There are a number of special considerations. I won't get into the political issues that we have there and privacy issues that are challenging. Those are indeed challenging. The other issue that surprised us is the necessity to have a server behind the curtain, so in China, because we were getting inconsistent delivery and quality issues until we established that capability in China. So that was something that was important. The other is the rampant proliferation of knockoff platforms. There are no fewer than 4 iPhone knockoffs, and they're good, and we need to support them. The same with Android and others widely installed. So there are some special circumstances in China, but we've been there for about over 2 years now, and it seems to be working well, but it is a challenge.
And Dave, building off of that, who do you think will win this platform war?
Wow, if you would have asked me 6 months ago, I would have said Android. But I think we are going to have definitely a 2-horse race. I wouldn't count any of them out. Windows Mobile, it could even show up again, although not a lot of people are betting on that. I don't think there's going to be a winner. I think we're going to have a fragmented landscape for a long time to come.
Okay, Stuart, do you have any thoughts on that?
I would definitely agree. I think, iOS and Android are clearly kind of front and center right now. We don't have a lot of users that are taking surveys on BlackBerries, and I think a lot of that's because a number of those are business devices that are, that are locked in terms of the ability to download apps and things like that. We haven't seen much in the way of Windows Phone yet, but we're definitely keeping an eye on it. So I think it's at least a 2-horse race and probably a multi-horse race going forward.
Okay. We don't have much longer left, but we've gotten a couple technical questions. So if we don't mind just covering a couple of those for both of you probably. Stuart, if you want to start, what do you see as the limit on length of mobile surveys or the number of questions that you can ask?
It's a good question, and there's, we have a rule of thumb, and it's not really carved in stone, but we try and keep mobile surveys to 10 minutes or less, and we really try to keep them more like 7 or 8 minutes, and we try and keep the number of questions down to, 10 or 12 or less. Dave showed some examples of the difficulties in rendering, typical grid-type questions on mobile phones. So there are some things that just don't work as well on mobile or that can take a little bit longer. But we find that, if we're doing a survey, we don't really see a lot of dropout or drop-off until after about 10 or 12 minutes. So we try and keep them to that length in general.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. On occasion, what we'll do is we'll design the survey working with our customer so that we can suspend it at an appropriate time, so that allows the customers to suspend, or the respondent to suspend their engagement for a period and then re-engage at a time that's convenient for them. Being offline allows you to do that, and being an app allows you to do that quite easily.
Yeah, we found that the people are willing to participate over a period of time, so we can get them to participate in diary projects that take, 4, 5, even 7 days before we begin to see drop-off. But we try and keep each individual event, if you will, within that diary down to that kind of, 7 to 10 minute level.
Okay, excellent. I want to be respectful of everyone's time, so we'll end it there. I want to thank both Stuart Ryder and Dave King for joining us today. Everyone that's on the call today will receive the recording and slides in a couple of days, and we'll address any questions that we didn't get to also within that time frame. So thank you again for everyone that joined, and thank you to our presenters.